I walked in with the adrenaline of a signed deal still in my veins and found my own dining table staged like a meeting. She didn't cry, she presented. The elevator ride up felt like victory. My phone still had the congrats texts stacked like chips. I let myself picture her barefoot in the kitchen, that half smile she wore when she knew I'd done something hard. The door opened to silence. Chloe was already sitting at the dining table, spine straight, hands folded. Not comfortable at home straight, prepared straight. Hair done. Blazer. A glass of water placed like a prop. The overhead light was on, bright and unforgiving, like she wanted no shadows in the room. I set my keys down without a sound. Hey! Hi! She didn't stand, didn't come close. Her eyes tracked me the way a recruiter tracks a candidate. Polite, distant, evaluative. I kept my voice even. What's going on? She took a breath like she'd rehearsed it. I'm leaving. There it was. Clean. No preamble. No softening. For who? I asked because I already knew it was for someone, not because I needed details. She blinked once. Julian. The name landed with the weight of a headline. Founder. Profile. The kind of man people photographed holding a mic selling certainty like a product. Chloe's tone stayed calm. He's a builder, Ethan. He builds. You assess. You optimize. You judge. You don't risk it. I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was the first time I heard our relationship translated into a performance review. I slid into the chair across from her. Slow. You're breaking up with me using LinkedIn vocabulary. Her jaw tightened. Don't do that. Do what? I asked. Call it what it is? She looked down, then back up, as if checking notes in her head. I'm moving out this weekend. I'll need the next Stanford payment handled before the deadline. There it was, the real ask, delivered like it was standard procedure. I held her gaze. No. A small pause, like she didn't understand the word in that context. Ethan, this is my future. That's great, I said. Then fund it. Her mouth opened, then closed. She shifted tactics. You promised. I nodded once. I promised us. You just liquidated us and want the benefits package to remain intact. Her eyes hardened. So you're punishing me. I'm closing an account, I said quietly. You don't get to resign and keep the salary. For the first time, her calm cracked. You can't just. I can, I said. Still no volume. And I am. Something in me went cold and clear. Not anger, not grief. Clarity. The moment she framed me as an asset, I stopped being a boyfriend and became what I've always been when numbers don't match. Decisive. I stood up. Send me your moving plan. You'll pick up your stuff with a time window. And Chloe. She looked up. I closed a major deal today, I said. I came home to celebrate my life. Turns out I was just funding yours. And I walked out of my own dining room like it belonged to someone else. We met at a tech mixer that pretended it wasn't a tech mixer. Dim lights, overpriced mezcal, a DJ playing something minimal enough to qualify as ambience. People clustered in circles, trading company names like they were blood types. The usual. Founders selling visions, VCs pretending to be bored, everyone smiling too hard. Chloe was the only person in the room talking about infrastructure. Not AI will change everything infrastructure, real infrastructure. Latency, reliability, ugly trade-offs. I caught the end of a sentence as I passed. Because if your pipeline can't survive a bad deployment, you don't have a product, you have a demo. That made me stop. I walked over. Who are you roasting? She turned, took me in, and didn't do the normal thing where someone performs interest. She was just present. Nobody, she said. Just reality. Her name was Chloe. Stanford admit pending. She told me like it was a line item, not a flex. She'd been at a mid-sized company with a real engineering culture, not a hype factory. She had that rare mix, smart, sharp, socially smooth, but not thirsty. We talked for 10 minutes and it felt like we'd skipped the small talk on purpose. When the crowd started to thicken, she leaned in slightly. You're in finance. Close, I said. I'm at risk. She smiled at that like she respected it. So you're the guy who tells founders their story doesn't work. I'm the guy who tells them what would have to be true for it to work. She laughed once. Quick. That's hot. It wasn't flirty in a cheap way. It was recognition. Like we'd both finally found someone speaking a language we didn't have to translate. We left together before the night could turn into a networking theater. She suggested a diner in San Mateo like it was a secret. We sat in a cracked vinyl booth under fluorescent lights, eating pancakes at midnight while two tired cops drank coffee a few tables away. At 2 a.m, she pulled out her phone and showed me a deck she was building for a scholarship pitch. No coyness, no pretending she didn't want it. Just raw ambition laid on the table with syrup stains. Tell me what's wrong with it, she said. I didn't want to. Not because it wasn't flawed, because it was personal. But she asked like she trusted me already, like she could handle the truth. So I gave it to her straight. Her eyes didn't glaze over. She didn't get defensive. She improved it in real time. Question, answer, refine. By the time the sun started pushing light through the blinds, her deck had a spine. She leaned back, tired and satisfied. You're ruthless. I'm accurate, I said. Same thing, she replied. That night turned into a rhythm. A hackathon date where she brought me coffee and a spare charger without asking. A weekend hike where she made fun of my deal voice, until I laughed so hard I had to stop walking. Drinks with my friends where she didn't try to win them. She just listened, then spoke once and made everyone shut up. We moved fast because everything around us moved fast, and we thought that meant we were doing it right. People said we looked perfect. The high-rise over the bay. The dinners where we talked markets instead of feelings. The shared calendars. The future that sounded clean when you said it out loud. And I believed it, because Chloe didn't just admire what I did. She understood it. She asked smart questions. She watched how I moved through rooms. She knew when I was tired before I admitted it. She didn't need me to be charming. She needed me to be real. That's why, when she got into Stanford and sat across from me with that contained excitement she wore like armor, I didn't hesitate. She said, "This changes everything." And I thought she meant us. I make a living betting on potential. I measure downside, manage risk, allocate capital toward futures that aren't fully formed yet. When Chloe asked me to invest in hers, it didn't feel like generosity. It felt like alignment. Felt like building. The night we agreed on Stanford money wasn't dramatic. No violin music, no candlelit vow. It was a Tuesday, takeout tie on the coffee table. My laptop open to a term sheet I just redlined for someone else's company. Chloe sat cross-legged on the couch. Acceptance email pulled up on her phone like a trophy she didn't need to wave. She was excited but controlled, like she refused to look needy in front of the person she loved. I can do it, she said. It changes the timeline. By how much? I asked. She named a number that made most people swallow hard. It didn't hit me the same way. I'd wired more than that for less meaningful reasons. Still, I watched her face. Not to judge, just to understand what she was really asking. I don't want debt, she said. Not for this. Not when it's supposed to put me in a stronger position. So, I said, you want me to cover it? I want us to cover it, she corrected quickly. That word, us, did a lot of work back then. I didn't posture. I didn't negotiate. I ran the mental model I always run. Downside, upside, timeline, probability of regret. The only variable I couldn't quantify was love. And at the time, love felt like the safest asset I had. Okay, I said. I'll fund it. Her shoulders dropped, relief disguised as a smile. Then she got playful, like she needed to make it lighter so it didn't feel like she'd just taken something huge. Wait, she said, and grabbed a pen from the kitchen junk drawer. She tore a corner off a napkin and wrote in exaggerated legal language. Investment agreement investor. Ethan asset. Chloe, future CEO version. Terms, tuition covered. Investor receives vibes. And marriage. Probably. She slid it across the table with a grin. Sign here, sir. I signed it without thinking. She signed it too. then folded it carefully and tucked it into her wallet like it was a joke that meant something. For the first semester, it worked the way I'd pictured. She called me between classes, quick updates, little sparks of her day. We did weekend study sessions at my place. Me reading my own reports while she drilled cases out loud, pacing the living room like a prosecutor. At night, we'd talk about the future like it was already under construction. We could build something. We could be a team. She made me feel included, not as a sponsor, as a partner. Then the second semester shifted. Calls got shorter. Texts turned functional. Weekends filled up. And her language changed in small ways that didn't register at first because I didn't want them to. We should became I need. Our plan became my schedule. Us became something she implied, not something she said. I didn't confront her. I didn't panic. I just noticed. Because when someone stops using we, it's not an accident. It's a decision they've already made, quietly, while you're still acting like the agreement holds. I didn't go to Stanford to police her life. I went because I missed her. It was a Friday afternoon, and I had a gap between meetings. I figured I'd bring her coffee, catch 10 minutes, steal a kiss, remind ourselves we were still real outside of calendars and coursework. I parked, walked the campus with that clean, sunlit Stanford calm around me. Students on bikes, parents touring, the whole place looking like an ad for certainty. Chloe had told me she'd be in the library with her study group. I found them in a glass-walled room on the second floor. For people around a table, laptops open, whiteboard covered in neat boxes and arrows. And Chloe, focused, sharp, hair pulled back, pen moving like she was in command. Then I saw him. Julian didn't look like an MBA student. He looked like he'd never waited for permission in his life. Crisp shirt, expensive watch, relaxed posture that said he belonged anywhere he decided to be. His confidence wasn't loud, it was practiced. Chloe laughed at something he said. Not a polite laugh. A real one. I paused outside the room for half a second, just long enough to register the feeling in my gut. The old animal part of the brain that doesn't need evidence. Chloe looked up and saw me. For a fraction of a second, her face flashed, surprise, then calculation. Like she was switching slides mid-presentation. She stood and stepped toward the door fast. Too fast. She opened it and slipped out, closing it behind her like she didn't want me inside the room. Hey, I said, holding up the coffee like an offering. Thought I'd surprise you. Ethan, hi. She took the coffee, but her eyes didn't soften. She glanced back through the glass, then back at me. Are you busy? I asked. We're in the middle of something, she said. Can you? She didn't finish the sentence, but the message was clear. Not now. I nodded once. Who's that? I tilted my head toward the room. Her shoulders squared. That's Julian. He's in our group. She opened the door again and called through the gap, voice bright and controlled. Guys, this is Ethan, my partner. Partner, not boyfriend. Not the name she used when she was proud. Julian stood, smooth, already smiling like he'd been waiting for this. He came to the door with easy confidence, hand extended. Ethan, he said, heard a lot about you. That line hit wrong. Too familiar. Too rehearsed. I shook his hand. His grip was firm, calibrated. His eyes stayed on mine a beat longer than necessary. Like this wasn't a greeting, this was a measurement. Likewise, I said. Chloe's hand touched my arm lightly, not affectionate, directive. A gentle steering touch you use on someone at a corporate event. We're slammed, she said, voice still polished. I'll call you later, okay? I looked at her. I drove down here. I know, she said, and her tone made it sound like I'd committed a minor offense. Julian leaned in with the kind of grin that made people trust him right before he took something. We're building something cool, he said. You should let Chloe focus. She's a weapon. Chloe smiled at that. Actually smiled. Something in me went still. Not anger, not jealousy, recognition, because I'd watched founders like Julian before. I knew that energy, the way they gather people, pull attention, turn rooms into orbit. And I'd watched Chloe respond to it like she'd been waiting for someone to speak to her that way. I didn't make a scene. I didn't push into the room. I didn't demand anything. I nodded, stepped back. Sure, I'll let you work. Chloe didn't follow me. She didn't walk me out. She stayed by the door like she was guarding a boundary. In the car, I sat for a full minute without starting the engine. The facts were small. Nothing illegal. Nothing explicit. But the pattern was loud. Later that night, she called like she said she would, late, short, efficient. You embarrassed me today, she said. I kept my voice calm. By bringing you coffee? By showing up unannounced, she said. It put me in a weird position. A weird position, I repeated. Yes, in front of my group. I could hear it in her wording. Optics, image, control. I'm your boyfriend, I said. That shouldn't be weird. Silence. Then, Ethan, you don't get it. This program is intense. I get intensity, I said. I close deals in rooms full of sharks. I'm not asking for your time. I'm asking why you looked at me like I was a problem. Her voice sharpened. You're making this about you. No, I said. You're making it about them. She exhaled, frustrated. Julian's just helpful. He has connections. He thinks differently. There it was. The first time she described another man the way she used to describe me. I stayed quiet because if I spoke too soon, it would come out hot. And I didn't want heat. I wanted the truth. Finally, I said, I don't feel like your partner anymore. She snapped back fast. That's not fair. Fair isn't the point, I said. I'm telling you what's happening. You're being insecure, she said. The word landing like a label she could stick on me to avoid looking at her own behavior. I didn't flinch. I'm being observant. Another pause. Then she got colder. I can't do this right now. I have deliverables. Of course you do, I said. We ended the call without resolving anything. She went back to her world. I sat in mine, staring at the napkin agreement in my memory like it was a joke with teeth. Because I wasn't being treated like a man she loved. I was being treated like a sponsor she needed to manage. The message came in on a Wednesday, from a number I didn't have saved. You seem like a smart guy. Check her tags. She's not where she says she is. No signature. No drama. Just a line that hits like a pin through a balloon. I stared at it for a second, then set the phone down. I didn't feel rage. I felt something cleaner. The instinct to verify. That's my default. When something doesn't add up, I don't argue with it. I test it. I opened Instagram. Not her profile, public posts around her orbit. Stanford classmates. Event accounts. Founder circles that treat privacy like a marketing problem. It took less than 10 minutes to see the pattern. Chloe wasn't front and center in anything. She was always just off to the side, caught in reflections in group shots in the background behind the main character. But she was there, repeatedly, and Julian was always there too. Same cities. The same weekend she told me she was buried. Same smiles angled toward each other like they'd practiced them. I didn't screenshot like a jealous teenager. I logged dates. Friday, Napa retreat. Saturday, case prep. Sunday, team dinner. Except the tags said Monterey, a beach hotel, a founder event. I kept going. Then I found the receipt. It was folded once, tucked into the side pocket of her carry-on when she left it at my place after a rushed stopover. I wasn't digging. I was putting the bag away so I didn't trip over it. The paper slid out like it wanted to be found. Luxury hotel. 2 nights. 1 room. The date lined up with a weekend she told me she'd slept in the library. I sat on the edge of the bed with the receipt in my hand and let the math run to completion. Not the emotional math, the real kind. Inputs, outputs, contradiction. People think betrayal is a moment. It isn't. It's a system. And once I saw the system, I stopped trying to feel my way through it. I built a timeline. I compared stories to evidence. I watched her behavior like I'd watch an executive whose numbers suddenly got too clean. I didn't confront her. Not because I was scared. Because I wasn't trying to win an argument. I was trying to understand what I was actually standing on, before I took a step that couldn't be undone. Chloe didn't break up with me the way people break up. She delivered it like a press release. I've thought a lot about what I need, she said, sitting across from me again, with a calm face, careful words. This isn't about anyone doing anything wrong. It's about alignment. Alignment, like we were mismatched software. I nodded once. You're leaving. Yes. And you still want the tuition paid. Her eyes didn't blink. You agreed to support my Stanford path. That shouldn't change because our relationship is evolving. Evolving, I repeated. Into you with him. A flicker, irritation, then control. Don't be small, Ethan. I let that land without reacting. I'm not being small. I'm being accurate. She leaned forward slightly, voice firm, practiced. If you cut funding now, you're sabotaging me. No, I said. I'm removing myself. Her composure finally cracked at the edges. You can't just back out of a commitment. I can, I said. Watch. She sat back, eyes sharpening. I'll take legal action if I have to. I almost smiled. Not because it was funny, because it confirmed the truth. When she couldn't charm me into compliance, she reached for leverage. Go ahead, I said. Have your lawyer read the napkin? Her jaw tightened. You're doing this to punish me. I'm doing this because you changed the terms, I said. You don't get to terminate the relationship and keep the sponsor. Her voice rose for the first time. After everything I gave you, I cut in, still quiet. Don't rewrite history. You made a choice. Now you own it. I stood up, pulled my phone out, and did the work in front of her. No speeches, no drama, just execution. First call, my building management. Remove Chloe's access effective immediately. Second, my attorney. Draft notice. Funding ends today. Any contact goes through you. Third, my assistant. Block her from my calendar, my travel profiles, everything. Chloe watched, stunned, like she'd assumed I'd negotiate because she was used to getting her way. You're seriously doing this? She said, voice tight. Yes, I said. Pickup is Saturday, 10 to 11. Security will escort. Anything left behind gets stored for 30 days. After that, it's disposed of. Her eyes flashed. You're cold. I looked at her, steady. No, I'm clear. She stood abruptly, anger replacing the corporate calm. Julian was right about you. I didn't bite. I just nodded like she'd finally said something honest. Good, I said. Then this should be easy for you. And that was it. Not a fight. Not a begging match. A closed account. A locked door. A future she could fund herself. Julian showed up at my office at 8:12 a.m., like he owned the elevator schedule. The reception buzzed my line. There's someone here asking for you. Says it's important. I told them to send him in. Not because I respected the interruption, because I wanted to see what kind of man walks into another man's space wearing entitlement like cologne. He entered smiling, hands open, posture relaxed. The same calibrated charisma I'd seen on campus, now aimed at me. Ethan, he said like we were peers. I appreciate you making time. I didn't, I said. You walked in. He laughed lightly, like I'd made a joke. Fair. Look, this whole thing with Chloe, I think you're taking it personally. I leaned back in my chair. It is personal. Sure, he said, nodding like a therapist. But you're letting emotion drive decisions. Cutting her tuition. That's pettiness. I didn't react. I just watched him. People like Julian can't tolerate silence. They fill it with their own confession. He stepped closer, lowered his voice. Chloe's important to what we're building. Stanford's part of the package. Your ending payments creates noise. Your noise, I said. He spread his hands. It doesn't have to be adversarial. I came with a solution. He slid a card onto my desk. His company, pitch deck link. A sentence printed like scripture. I'll give you an allocation in our Series A, he said. Friends and family terms. You keep funding her through the MBA, we keep everything clean. There it was. The tell. Not love. Not loyalty. Cash flow. I looked at the card, then back at him. So you're asking me to pay tuition for the woman you're sleeping with, and in exchange you'll let me invest in your company. His smile stiffened. Don't phrase it like that. I will phrase it exactly like that, I said. Because that's what it is. His eyes sharpened. You're a finance guy. You understand leverage. I do, I said. And now I understand yours. That landed. His charm dimmed a notch, the way lights dim before the backup generator kicks on. You don't want to make enemies, he said, voice colder. I stood up slowly. You came into my office to call me petty and sell me a bribe. Then you threatened me. He held my gaze, trying to dominate the space with stares alone. I didn't blink at first. I'm not continuing payments, I said. And you're not getting past my assistant again. If you show up here another time, my lawyer will be the only person you meet. Julian's jaw tightened. For a second, the mask slipped and I saw what was underneath. Hunger, desperation, and the belief that other people exist to fund his story. He took his card back like it was a weapon he didn't get to use. You'll regret this. I nodded once. No, I said. You will. And he walked out, still trying to look in control, even as his footsteps sped up down the hall. The assignment came through on a Monday like any other. A memo, a calendar block, a deal code. Julian's company. New name, same ego. Deck full of certainty. Category defining. Unfair advantage. The kind of language that makes junior associates lean forward like they're witnessing history. My partner said, "You good to run point?" I didn't hesitate. Yes. Not because I wanted to be near their story again, because in my world, you don't get many chances to address a problem with the full support of the process. Diligence is where people stop performing and start bleeding facts. I took it apart the way I always do. Architecture, hiring history, timelines, vendor lists, commit patterns. I asked for the repo under standard pretext. I scheduled technical calls with their engineers. I watched how Julian answered questions. Fast, confident, slightly too fast, always steering away from specifics. Then I saw it. A module name buried deep in their stack that matched something I'd seen before. Not a general concept. A specific implementation style, naming conventions, edge case handling, the kind of fingerprints you don't copy unless you've touched the original. I pulled public patents, old engineering blogs, archived documentation. I called a quiet contact who'd been at Chloe's former employer. No accusations. Just, "Does this ring a bell?" He went silent for a second, then said, "Where did you see that?" That was the moment the air changed. I kept digging. Side-by-side comparisons. Dependency trees. A timeline that didn't make sense unless someone had carried something across a boundary they weren't allowed to cross. And the shape of it came into focus. Chloe didn't just leave me. She likely left with more than her suitcase. Their vision wasn't innovation. It was a liability with a good haircut. I didn't celebrate. I didn't gloat. I just compiled the file the way I'd want it compiled if I were on the other side, clean, sourced, undeniable. Because revenge is messy when it's emotional. This wasn't emotional anymore. This was professional. The investment committee meetings started the way they always do. Coffee, quiet confidence, people pretending they hadn't already half decided. Julian stood at the front like the room belonged to him. Chloe sat 2 seats behind, legs crossed, expression neutral, professional calm. She didn't look at me when I walked in. Julian clicked his first slide. Market size, pain point, unfair advantage. A clean story with a clean arc. My partners leaned forward. I watched their eyes, not on him, on the idea of being early to something that would make them look smart. When he finished, he smiled like a man receiving applause he'd already budgeted for. Questions? The chair asked. I spoke without changing my tone. I have findings from diligence. Julian's smile held, but his jaw tightened. I shared my screen. No drama, just structure. Slide 1. Timeline inconsistencies between their stated build dates and documented code history. Slide 2. Side-by-side technical comparisons. Specific modules. Identical edge case handling. Matching naming patterns. Slide 3. IP risk summary. Tied to a specific prior employer and publicly documented proprietary architecture. I didn't accuse. I presented. The room shifted. You can feel it when smart people stop imagining upside and start measuring downside. A partner asked, "Julian, can you explain the origin of this component?" Julian laughed once, too sharp. "This is ridiculous. Answer the question," the chair said, calm but firm. Julian's eyes snapped to me. Of course he would do this. He stopped, then decided to go for it. "He's my girlfriend's ex. He's jealous." Silence. Not shocked silence, interested silence. I didn't flinch. "That's accurate," I said. "We were together. I funded her MBA. She ended the relationship. That history doesn't change the code." I clicked to the next slide. A clean list of sources, dates, and independent confirmations. "I'm not asking anyone to trust my feelings," I said. "I'm asking you to look at the evidence and ask one question. If this goes to discovery, do we like our position?" No one spoke for a moment, because everyone already had the answer. The chair leaned back. "We're done here," she said. "We're not proceeding." Julian's face lost its polish. Chloe finally looked at me. Quick, sharp, like she wanted to hate me for making reality public. I met her eyes once, then looked away. Not to spare her. To show her she no longer had a seat at my table, any table. Julian gathered his laptop too fast, hands suddenly less steady. As they walked out, the room stayed quiet, the way it does after something irreversible happens. I closed my notes, stood, and felt nothing loud, just final.
Subscribe and stay one step ahead of cheaters. And trust me, the next story makes this one look like a fairy tale.